And we're about to start. All right, so we're talking about aspects today. Where is that? Was it this one? Yeah, here we go. So we're talking about looking at aspects today. And so a bunch of the people that are here right now have been in more than one of these. Oh, we've got a new person. And so they kind of know my my orientation towards astrology a little bit. That I'm essentially. Oh, Diana, you can turn off your camera if you want. You don't have to keep it on if you're comfortable. If you're comfortable with it on, that's great. If you're not, no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So they know that essentially I'm a classical astrologer, a traditional astrologer, and that ultimately what I'm trying to do with these workshops is to give you ways. You can be whatever kind of astrologer you want to be, but to kind of give you ways to be able to enter the chart on your own. And I think some of the things that we've talked about, we've been able to kind of figure out how to do. So we're going to start where we've been starting, which is with signs and planets, and how signs and planets signify aspects, because they actually do. And so I'm going to actually change. You can see I've made this little table thing because I didn't think I was going to be able to find the graphic that I did end up finding. So hold on one moment. I'll stop the share. And this one. Unmute yourself. Do I need to mute you? Let's see. Yeah, there we go. All right. So I want you to look at this picture, and I'm going to read something, and I want to read something where I'm going to basically, what they're basically saying is that the aspects have the same characteristics as planets. And so hopefully this isn't going to switch, but maybe it will. It said the sextile aspect is a good aspect, and it is an aspect of medium friendship and concord, and it is said to be an aspect of medium friendship because it is drawn from Venus and from the luminaries. I'm going back to this other one again now. All right, so what they're basically saying when they say that is taking the two signs of the lights, right? The moon rules Cancer and the sun rules Leo. If you look on either side of those signs, you have Mercury signs. So you have Gemini right next to Cancer, you have Virgo right next to Leo. That's 30 degrees away. Remember, there are 30 degrees in every sign, all right? 30 degrees in every sign. That means that 30 degrees away from the lights are the sign of Mercury. 60 degrees away from the lights are the signs of Venus. Now, Venus is called the lesser benefic, and so they call the sextile the aspect of medium friendship because it has her nature, which is 60 degrees away from, Libra is 60 degrees away from Leo, and Taurus is 60 degrees away from Cancer. Now, let me just kind of even break this down a little further. We can look at Cancer as 30 degrees, Gemini as another 30 degrees, another 30 degrees, another 30 degrees. Gemini is 30 degrees away from Cancer. Taurus is 60 degrees away from Cancer. Coming this direction, Leo is 30 degrees, Virgo is 30 degrees, Libra is 30 degrees. Virgo is 30 degrees away from Leo. Libra is 60 degrees away from Leo, meaning that Venus's signs, and remember, Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Venus's signs are 60 degrees away, and that is why the sextile is considered medium friendship. Okay, so for those of you who are kind of new to the class, I've kind of dove right in, or I've dived right in. If you have a question, I'm going to stop right here before I go on. If you have a question or you're confused or whatever, you may still be confused, but I'm going to have to go on anyway. But if you have a question, this is the time to ask me, because we're going to move on from there. But what I'm basically doing is building on what we've been doing for the past few weeks, where we've been talking about how signs are emanations of planets. So I guess that's the first thing that I guess for the two people who are new that you need to kind of be thinking about. Signs are emanations of planets, and thus it's really planetary energy. Every planet has a masculine diurnal sign, which in Venus's case is Libra, and a feminine nocturnal sign, which in Venus's case is Taurus. Mercury's diurnal is Gemini, his nocturnal is Virgo. So all of these planets are basically manifesting themselves, particularizing themselves through the signs. I don't see any questions, so I'm going on. So the next thing he says is that, and it said that, okay, the square aspect is said to be moderately bad, and it's an aspect of medium enmity because it is drawn from Mars and from the luminaries, since the domiciles of Mars regard the domiciles of the luminary from a square aspect. What he's saying there is, going back to our thing, 90 degrees away from Cancer is Aries. 90 degrees away from Leo is Scorpio. Aries is the masculine diurnal sign of Mars. Scorpio is the feminine nocturnal sign of Mars. Okay, so it basically continues, and Mars is called, remember he said it's a medium enmity, or not quite so much of an enmity, because Mars is the lesser benefic. Okay, Mars is the lesser benefic. Okay, I'm not going to go back to the text. I'm just going to go on from here. 120 degrees away, so this is 30, 60, 90, or rather this is 30, 60, 90, 120 degrees away, that's Jupiter, and this is 30, 60, 90, 120 degrees away. There's Jupiter, sign of Sagittarius from Leo. 120 degrees away from Cancer is Jupiter's sign of Pisces from Cancer. Now you're thinking, what is this all about? I don't understand. Why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense. I'm saying it because what they're doing is they're equating the nature of the aspect with the planet, with the nature of the planet. So it says that the 60-degree angle is like Venus. The 90-degree angle is like Mars. The 120-degree angle is like Jupiter. And thus the 180-degree angle, which is Cancer, the opposite of Cancer is Capricorn, the opposite of Leo is Aquarius. The 180-degree aspect, that's like Saturn. So that gives us an idea of what these things are really, what these planets are really about, how they act, and then on top of that, what these aspects are about. So the aspects are reflections of the planetary nature. So keep looking at that. Just keep looking at how these arrows are going. 60 degrees away, when we get to the sextile, we come to medium enmity. We come to a lesser benefic aspect. When we come to the 90-degree aspect, we come to a lesser malefic aspect. When we come to the 120-degree aspect, we come to a greater benefic aspect, and etc. And then when we come to the 180-degree aspect, we come to a greater malefic aspect. So the four main Ptolemaic aspects are essentially connected to the planets themselves and the natures of the planets themselves. All right, so that's the important thing to kind of be thinking about. So one of the things people don't tend to understand or tend to really notice is that they don't really know what the aspects mean themselves, right? They'll say, okay, such as they know squares are bad, or they know oppositions are bad, or squares are bad, or something like that, but they don't actually know what they're exactly kind of talking about. So we're going to get to that in a second, like what they're actually really talking about. Okay, so a really important aspect to dealing with aspects, is this idea of applying versus separating. And those who've been with me before have done this, have looked at this Chaldean order thing before, going from slower to fastest. Saturn is the slowest planet. We're only dealing with the inners. We're not dealing with the outer three. Saturn, Jupiter inner, Mars faster, Sun faster, Venus faster than Sun, Mercury faster than Venus, Moon faster than Mercury. Okay, so Saturn is the slowest of the seven. The Moon is the fastest of the seven. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to look at your own chart and look at the moon. So the moon is the fastest planet in the chart. So I want you to look at the moon, and I want you to tell me any planet. Okay, well, first of all, let me just give you one little piece of information, and then you'll do this. So look at what this says. It says applying, the faster planet is in a lower degree of longitude than the slower planet, with longitude meaning a sign degree. So that means if, for instance, if the moon is at 11 degrees of Aries and Jupiter is at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, there is a sextile between those two planets, and it's an applying one because why? The faster planet is at lower degrees of the sign than the slower planet. Any questions about that? Send the questions in now if you have questions. Otherwise, what I want you to do is look at your moon and find out if it's applying to anything. Is it in a lower, okay, hold on a second. What do we got here? Oh, I'll come back to the book in a bit. Yes, you could explain applying versus separating. Thank you. All right, Maria. So applying. So, okay, well, first of all, think of it in context of this order, right? So the first thing we want to be thinking about is who is faster than whom, all right? So who's faster than whom? The moon is the fastest of the seven. Saturn is the slowest of the seven. That means, excuse me, that means that all of the 6 planets can apply to Saturn, but Saturn cannot apply to any of them because he's slower than all of them. All right, so that's one of the first ways. Hold on. Yes. You want to see an example with the chart? I was actually going to do this first and then go to chart examples, but this looks like a better idea. And thank you for suggesting it. Okay, this is Ted Bundy. We were going to do this when we got to receptions. But let's see. So if we think about the Chaldean order is Saturn is the slowest, then comes Jupiter, then comes Mars, then comes the Sun, then comes Venus, then comes Mercury, then comes the Moon. Okay, now the Moon is the fastest planet in this chart. Is it applying to any planet in this chart? And the answer is no. The Moon is at 17 degrees, and the Moon, we can only use 60 degrees ahead and 60 degrees below, 90 degrees ahead and 90 degrees below or behind, 120 degrees ahead and 120 degrees behind, or 180 degrees. Okay, so those are the only ones we can do. So there is no planet that's at a higher degree than the Moon. He's at 10, she's at 17. She has separated, right? So that's that's a separation. So when the Moon, when a faster planet is leaving the exact aspect of another planet, it is separating. So this planet would have been an exact aspect to this planet when it was at 10 degrees. Okay, so when the Moon was at 10 degrees, she would have been in an exact sextile with Neptune. She is not. Same thing here. When she was at 13 degrees, she would have been at an exact trine with Pluto. Same thing here. When she was at 8 degrees, she would have been in an exact trine with Saturn. That means she is separating from Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, and look, she's separating also from Mars because she was just in a conjunction. He's the planet she just separated from, which means there are no applying aspects in this chart. So if we look at Mercury, who's the next fastest, he's in a higher degree than all of the slower planets. Venus is at 20, Jupiter is at 13, Pluto 13, Saturn 8, Neptune 10. There is no aspect between Capricorn and Sagittarius. See what I'm saying? So same thing with Venus. She's at 20, Jupiter's at 13. She's just separated from him when she was at 13. Same thing with this Pluto, where she just separated from the square. She just separated from the square of Saturn as well. Okay, so that is separating and applying. Let's see if we can find a chart with applying. This should have it. Can you see this new chart? This one was called the DC Madam, Heidi Fleiss. She had a prostitution agency where she geared to all of the different politicians and diplomats. There should be one here. Yes, look, 18 degrees of Sagittarius, Mercury, who's fast, versus 24 degrees of Gemini. Okay, so that is an applying opposition. Mercury is applying to the opposition of Jupiter because he is at lower degrees. He's at 18 of Sagittarius and Jupiter is at 24. There should be one between Saturn and the Sun here too. This woman was born the day before I was, so I know this chart very well. Okay, yes, there is. Here, the Sun is applying to the sextile of Saturn. The Sun is at 8 degrees of Capricorn. Saturn is at 12 degrees of Cancer. Okay, so that is the difference. Remember, once again, you're looking for who is faster and who is slower, right? And if you think as per Chaldean order, right? Write that down, right? Because you're going to need it. Because you're going to use it today because we're going to look at your own chart, right? So you're going to be able to look at your own chart because there used to be a belief that the only important aspect in a chart in a natal chart, in any kind of chart, is an applying aspect because that's what's coming into being, right? Something that's separating is on its way out. So remember, one of the things that I've also said to you is horary is I believe the horary is really the foundation of astrology. And so what we're really learning is how to read as horary astrologers. But once you read as a horary astrologer, you can read any type of astrology that way, and you'll be dead point accurate because you're so on. And so this is something that is absolutely necessary to understand if you're really trying to figure out how does something work? Is something going to actually happen as opposed to has something already happened, right? That's really the most important thing. So when something is applying, it's about to happen. It's imminent. If something is separating, then we're leaving. They actually talk about the planet that's separating turns its glance away from the planet it was just an aspect to. So something to think about in that respect. And look at what it says even here. This is a quote, the application is like one seeking what they want. And the separation is like one regretting a matter. What's the implication of regret? You're looking back, right? You're looking back on something. Maybe you wanted to do something a different way, but either way, you're looking back. So that's the main thing behind the difference between applying and separation in a chart. Now, let me actually put another chart up for a second and give an example of, in a horary chart, what we might be talking about. Okay, this came up and this woman said I could use it. Is my marriage over? If you can't see the chart, let me know. Is my marriage over? We should be sharing. And let's see, first of all, if there's anything. Let's hold on a second. Can't see it? Okay, thank you. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, beautiful. All right. So is my marriage over, she asked. And this is not her natal chart. This is purely a horary chart matter of fact, she put her natal chart in, but I actually did a horary for once I understood it. So when we're looking at at horary, when we're looking at a question like this, we have to find the person asking the question, and we have to find the thing being asked about. So in order to find the person asking the question, you use the ascendant and the planetary ruler. So the ascendant here is Gemini, and its planetary ruler is Mercury. To find the thing being asked about, in which case she's asking about her husband and marriage, we would look at the ruler of the seventh house. The seventh house and the ruler of the seventh house, which represents marriages, spouses, relationships, etc. And here we have this Jupiter. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So in this chart, what do we have here? A faster planet, Mercury, is at a higher degree than a slower planet, Jupiter, right? So that kind of looks like separation. That is a separation, right? That's exactly what we would call a separation. So the faster planet is leaving the connection to the slower planet, and that is what's happening here. Now, however, there's another third party kind of thing happening that is keeping them connected, that ended up keeping them connected, that I'll come back to this chart and we'll talk about it in another context. But there is an example of separation. So on first glance, on looking at this chart, I might have said, yes, it's over. Is my marriage over? Yes, it's over, because you are leaving that other person. You are leaving the other. You are leaving your spouse. You are separating from your spouse. If anything, it's coming from you. And sure enough, it was coming from her. And here we've got the Mars, very, somewhat close to the ascendant. Lots of contentions and arguments. We've got the moon in the seventh, and moon is the ruler of the second. All of it was around money. So there was all that kind of stuff that was going on. But ultimately, this is just an example of this, seeing it in a horary chart, not necessarily in a natal chart, and being able to make a judgment on the situation as a result, right? She asked about her marriage. Here we've got the person asking about the marriage, leaving the marriage, walking away from the marriage. It's only 1 degree, so it's recent, but walking away, right? And so that might have been what I would have said if I didn't have other information. Questions? I'm going to keep just stopping for questions because I know this part. This is the part where numbers are important to astrology, and where we're kind of, and also where math is important to astrology. I want to bring up for just 1 second. I want to bring up my zodiac, my weird little zodiac thing, because I think that might be useful for you to kind of see what I'm talking, what's necessary. Okay. Or see kind of how it's working. So what it basically said, so the book is called Introduction to Traditional Astrology. It is a translation by Benjamin Dykes, Dr. Benjamin Dykes, of two older astrologers from the 8th century, 9th century, Arabic astrologers. And I'm kind of going through this. Is basically, you all are kind of journeying with me through this book. And me kind of looking at it in these new techniques and seeing if I think they're interesting or important. But one of the things that I think is very interesting and important, a way of looking at it, is that not only do planets regard each other, aspects can be seen as a type of regard. They can be seen as a type of looking at or attention that planets give each other. Once again, I'm going to say it one more time. Aspects can be seen as a type of regard or look or attention. And that's really important, because we're gonna talk about that in just a second. But as a result, signs also regard each other. So planets regard and signs regard. So for instance, if a planet is in Aries, the planet and the sign is regarding the signs that are 3, 4, 5 away from it, and 11, 10, and 9 away from it. I'm going to do that again. So Aries, the sign of Aries looks at Gemini, Cancer, and Leo, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Sagittarius. And so, like I said, this is where the math part comes, because remember, Aries is 30, this is 60, This is 90. This is 120. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. 30. No, I'm sorry. 30, 69. I keep doing it wrong, but it's 0 to 30. That's the problem. 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 to 120, 120 to 150, 150 to 180, all the way back to 360, right? So that's what we're looking at, which means that 3 signs away, that's your sextile. 4 signs away, there's your square. 5 signs away, there's your trine. Same thing here. 11 signs away, there's your sextile. 10 signs away, there's your square. 9 signs away, there's your trine. You can do that with every sign, right? So Taurus looks at Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, Pisces, Aquarius, and Capricorn. And moving on, right? Gemini looks at Leo, Virgo, and Libra. It looks at Aries, Pisces, and Aquarius. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's what we're talking about. When we're talking about aspects, we're really talking about the regard with which planets and signs use for each other, the regard that they have for each other / use for each other. I'm moving a little bit ahead of myself, but I just think it's important to understand. And then also to understand that if I have a planet in Aries and I have a planet in Cancer, it's possible that they could be an aspect. But what has to happen? The faster planet has to be in a lower degree and within orb. We haven't even talked about orbs yet either, of the planet in Cancer. Right, so this is when we get into stuff that's not so much about, that's less about interpretation at this particular point and more about, okay, where are we? What are we doing? Right? So let's just stop here for 1 second. I want everybody to look at their moon. Okay, so I want everybody to look at the moon in their chart. And we'll take it one step at a time. First thing I want you to do is I want you to put into the chat the degree and sign that the moon is occupying in your chart. Okay. Okay, so I've got somebody who has a 23 degree and 57 minute Sag moon. So it's going to be very possible that that moon will not be able to apply to anybody. Why? Okay, I've got a 29 degree Aries moon. It's very possible that that moon may not be able to apply to anything. Why? Because nothing might be that high in the sign. I mean, sometimes you see it where like the moon's at 28 degrees and some planets at 29, and it's the last aspect the moon is going to make. Cancer at 10. So the people who've got, like, I mean, even with the 23 Sag, if there's something at a later degree, so remember, okay, let's think about this. Let's just take Sagittarius. Sagittarius looks at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th sign ahead of it, and the 11th, 10th, and 9th sign behind it, right? So that means Sag looks at Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, and then behind him looks at Libra, Virgo, and Leo, right? So do you have any planets in those 3 signs? Those 3 signs, once again, are Aquarius, Pisces, Aries. Also, what are the other ones? Libra, Virgo, Leo. If you know that, once you know the sequence, then you know which little block you're talking about. Now, if you have any, I'm talking to Layla here now, if you have any planets in those signs that are higher than 23 degrees and 57 minutes, you've got your moon applying to something. Okay, same thing with you for 19 degrees Sag, the exact same, Diana, same thing with you. If you've got any planets in those 3 signs, remember, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Libra, Virgo, Leo. If you have any, let's see, I do Mercury and Aries at 28. Okay, so you've got an application between the moon and Mercury. It's kind of wide. Now, if you had anything that was closer, you see, if you had anything that was closer, that would be a closer application, but that will work just fine. So great. That says to me that Diana understands what I'm talking about, and she was able to identify it. Someone has, Rami Welch has 6 degrees of Sag. Is there anything in, once again, what did I say? Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Libra, Virgo, Leo, anything in those higher than 6 degrees. Okay, for the Cancer, anything in Virgo. I have Mars and Aquarius at 7 degrees. There, we've got it. They're beautiful. So the moon is applying the next application. The moon is applying to Mars in Rami's chart. We've got moon applying to Mercury in Diana's chart. We've got moon applying to Mars in Rami's chart. So here's the thing. Now we're getting, once we finally start to understand this and look at it, then we're going to start to get into, now what the hell does it mean? What are we talking about? What does the nature of the aspect and the nature of the planets that are involved, what does that do? What does that end up making happen? Okay, who's got that 10? Okay, Lily. Okay, well, Lily, you know most of your, oh, that's right, but you got that weird thing where everything's 11 degrees away. So I don't know if your moon is applying to anything, or it's applying kind of widely by conjunction to the Jupiter, maybe, or to the, yeah, that's interesting. So we've got the Lily at 10 degrees. We've got the 29 degrees Aries, so more than likely not. We've got, okay, what else? Anybody else? Oh, 10 Virgo. Okay, so Becca, 10 Virgo, that means you're looking for Scorpio, Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, and you're looking for Cancer, Gemini, Taurus. Those are the planets you're looking for. You're looking for planets in those 6 signs. All right. So that's what you would be doing. Okay. So now look, especially those of you like even Diana, who's got it at 19, Mariah, who's got things going on at 29. Even for you, look backwards now. Look backwards and tell me who the moon just separated from. Hi, Gina. Welcome. We've kind of gotten stuck in. There will be there will actually be a video of this. I only have applying aspects to outer planets to the moon, but I see what you're describing. Okay, good, excellent. And so, but there'll be a video, and that'll kind of go through it. But it's gotten a little technical today. Separated from Mercury and applying to Mars. Thank you, Layla. Okay, excellent. So we're talking about, Gina, to kind of bring you up to speed. We're talking about aspects in the context of applying versus separating. And applying versus separating happens when you have planets that are faster, that are at lower degrees of a sign than a slower planet. And so that's what we've been trying to figure out for everybody is who's got stuff that's applying. So for instance, the person that's got the Mars at 7 degrees of Aquarius and something else at 6, I think the Sag 6 moon, that might be your closest applying aspect, and that's called a signature. So if everybody here can be thinking in this way, if you want to find your signature aspect, this is kind of my own nomenclature, is the 2 planets, only classical planets, only the classical 7, the closest applying aspect between 2 planets. Conjunctions absolutely count. Yes, conjunctions. So let's talk about what counts as far as when we talk about aspects. Conjunctions are not an aspect. They're an aspect. They're actually conjunctions. They're bodily conjunctions, but they count. The sextile counts. The trine counts. The square counts. The opposition counts. That's it. So what you're looking for is 2 planets. One needs to be faster than the other. And wait, just for Gina's sake, we'll come up and we'll show her the Chaldean order. So here, Gina, is the Chaldean order with planets from slowest to fastest. So the fastest planet is the moon. Saturn is the slowest. So I'll put that back up so people can look at it. Okay, what do we got going? I was wrong about not having any applying aspect. I have moon conjunct Venus applying. Fantastic. Yes, you do. Wow, that's very nice. That's very sexy. Okay, or can be, or that's very beautifying. It can be one of the, or very pleasure-oriented, or all of those things that Venus can be. Let's see. Yep, the Moon-Mars sextile is my signature. Okay, Moon-Mars, yeah, that would make sense, Rami. Sun at 10 Cancer and Saturn 20 Cancer would be a signature. Yes, it could be if there's nothing closer. If there's nothing closer than that. Can you please repeat what is signature? Thank you, I will. And I'm gonna write it as I repeat it here, so you can also see it. Signature aspect. It is the closest applying aspect in the chart. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to a chart to show you what I'm talking about so that you can get an idea. I'm going to switch to Heidi Fleiss. Can you see Heidi Fleiss?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, her closest aspect, her closest applying aspect is, she's got two that could be possible. Here's the moon at 4 degrees of Aries. That means that she looks at Gemini, Cancer, and Leo, and she looks at Aquarius, Capricorn, and Sagittarius. So forward in Gemini, nothing close enough, 24 degrees of Jupiter. Wait, there we go. Nothing else in these that would help. But back, we've got 5 degrees of Aries. That's really close. Back here, we've got 8 degrees of Capricorn. That's really close. This is the closest. This sextile between the moon and Mars at 5 degrees, at 4 degrees Aries to 5 degrees of Aquarius, this sextile. Now, it's interesting because I'm born the day after, and that actually moves the moon to 26 degrees of Aries, and it makes the sun sextile the closest. Just one day later. I'm born on 6/32 the next day, and so just that changes it just enough. Does anybody else want to find their how to be finding their closest planet? So keep thinking. What you're going to do is what you should do is start backwards. Start with Saturn and look to a planet that's going to Saturn. Is there anything really close going towards Saturn? Then look to Jupiter. Then you see, so do it kind of that way, and just kind of keep thinking about it. Well, I'll continue on with the class, and we'll continue looking at the rest of the class, and you can come back to it. And I didn't get a chance to. I was just telling Lily about how I've been acting very Mercury in Pisces and not particularly organized this week, and how unfortunate that's been. Come on. Where is the chat? Oh, there we go. 12 Capricorn applying to trine Jupiter. Yes, that would be it. Jupiter at 2. So, nope, it's the Jupiter at 2 with going to Venus at 3. What is it? Wait, Jupiter conjunct. Oh, no, Saturn is applied to. Saturn cannot apply to anyone. Saturn can apply to no one because he is the slowest. Remember, only fast planets can apply to slower ones. That's really important. Only fast planets can apply to slower ones. Okay, Venus is applying to Saturn. Venus is at 3 Sag, sextile Saturn at 6. Okay. So wait, what was this thing with Virgo and Moon conjunct to a Mars? That part I didn't understand, but otherwise, yes, Venus applying to Saturn. All right, so so you all are kind of starting to get your mind around this, and so believe it or not, like all of the stuff that I'm basically teaching you is beginning astrology, right? I'm not like really teaching you advanced astrology. This is the basics in order to be able to read a chart, and so you can see kind of how far away astrology has kind of gone from its scientific background, its original scientific background before science became what we know as science. But it was all about math, using math to relate observable things. And so now we're kind of getting to the observation of celestial bodies, but in the chart. And so that's what's different. So we need to be able to pay attention to what the numbers are. And last time we talked about this, so last week we talked about If the number is on the left of the sign, that's telling you how many degrees, because there are 30 degrees in each sign. If the number is to the right of the sign, that's telling you how many minutes, because there are 60 minutes in each degree, right? So if you've got a planet that's there was something at 23 degrees and 57 minutes, that means in 3 more minutes it'll be at 24 degrees. Hold on, what you got? Venus applying to Uranus. Okay. Oh, use only the classical planets. So in this particular case, the signature only involves the classical planets. Okay. Okay, Moon applying to Mars, Sun flying to Trine. So which is closer? What we're looking for is who's the closest. Yeah, so June 23, 45, Cancer opposing Saturn. Oh, that's an opposition, Lily. That's a separator. That's separating. Why? Because Jupiter is faster and Jupiter is at a higher degree than Saturn. Right? So Jupiter is at 23 degrees and 45 minutes. Saturn is at 21 degrees and 34 minutes. Jupiter is a faster planet than Saturn. Thus, Jupiter is leaving, right? He is separating from the opposition. So for you then, if the Moon, Mars, Sun, Jupiter within 2 degrees, that would be the closest. But you need to, even within those 4 planets, you need to figure out which are the closest, right? So there's 2 of them are going to be closer than the other 2. Right, so see if you can figure that part out, and then I'll move on from here. Okay, it feels like you all are grasping it, or grappling with it, or grasping it, and I don't want you to feel like, oh, this is too hard or whatever. I just kind of want you to understand that, like I said, this is beginning astrology, and this is kind of what you need to know in order to be able to get to where you are. One is 2, the other is -2. I don't get that. Other is -2. If it's less than 2, then that's the closest, right? So whichever is closest to the number. Okay, so let's say the number of the slow planet is 15 degrees and 7 minutes. Okay, and the other 2 are one is at 13 degrees and 18 minutes, and one is at 13 degrees and 40 minutes. The one at 13 degrees and 40 minutes is the closest to the other planet at 15. And I will put up a chart. I know you're going to do like, don't just say it, put up a chart. I'll put up a chart for you. Just as a matter of fact, I'll do that right now. All right, Heidi. So remember, we need to know the number that has the circle next to it. That's our degrees. The number that has the apostrophe next to it, that's our minutes. All right. So what we need to know is who is a slower planet, who is closest by number. And in those 6 signs, remember, we're talking about the Moon in Aries. She can only look at Gemini, Cancer, and Leo, and Aquarius, Capricorn, and Sagittarius. So just keep that in, these are the things to keep in mind. So if you're going to keep anything in mind today, keep in mind there are faster planets and there are slower planets. A planet only looks at the signs 3, 4, 5, 11, 10, 9 away, right? So only looks at those particular planets. Of course, there's the opposition where it looks at directly across, right? But we're just talking about the 60, 90, 120 angle right now, all right? So now we're looking for the closest in this chart. The closest, there's 4, there's 5. Is it in one of those 3 signs? Yes, that's the closest. So what we would be looking for, let's see, did you figure it out? Okay, you know what you need to do, Layla? You need to actually write in the degree and minutes of the Moon and the degree and minutes of Mars. You need to do it for all of them, for Moon, Mars, Sun, and Jupiter. Just write them all in the chat and I'll tell you. Okay, so, but this is kind of, we need to kind of know this. We need to kind of get this, because here's the thing. Even though separating aspects still do kind of make a difference in natal charts, it's important to know where the applying aspect is, because that's going to be the more acute experience that's going to happen. So you're going to experience it in a more acute fashion than you're going to experience the ones that are separating. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so let's move away for a second from that. We can come back to it. As we can see, this is kind of rough and grapply that we need to deal with, but it must be done. Okay, it must be kind of understood to move forward to the next place. Let's see what we have going on. How many degrees constitute a conjunction? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay, let's see Layla. So Layla's 2357 Moon, 2529 Mars, Sun, Sag, Sun, 1209, Capricorn, Jupiter, 1407. Oh, I see. It looks like the closest is, it looks like the Moon Mars is closest. Am I right? That's 132, and this is 132. Oh my God, exact. Oh my God, they're the exact amount of space away from each other. How fascinating. Okay, let me move on. But those are, so you have two signatures. We'll just say you've got two of them. That's fascinating. But you know what I would actually do? I would say only one signature, the Moon Mars, because the Sun is in Capricorn and Jupiter is in Virgo. And so basically that signature isn't helping Jupiter. So use only the Moon Mars one. Okay, so we're going to talk about reception for a second, because as though it weren't confusing enough, it gets more confusing, because you know how y'all are always asking, is that good or bad? And I'm always saying, we don't actually ask that question. What we ask is, how is it manifesting? Well, it's the same thing with aspects. Aspects can be made. There are good aspects. There are good aspects. There are bad aspects. Good aspects can be made bad. And bad aspects can be made good. Okay, so maybe except for the opposition. I don't think that the opposition can really, yeah, like I said, anything can work in a natal chart, but except for the opposition. But there are, everybody's so worried about their squares, but if you can kind of understand this issue around reception, then you'll understand that not all squares are bad squares. Okay, so there's three aspects of reception that I'm going to kind of go through today. And I can see that maybe this needs to be a two-part class where we kind of come back into it, or you all get to kind of chew it over in your minds, and then we come back to it and look at it again. Because what I'd really like you to be able to do is look at your charts and be able to tell me what's applying, what's separating, etc. So maybe I'll make that your homework for next week, and we'll start with that next week. But we're going to add this layer, and hopefully it won't confuse you too much. So mutual reception is when two planets exchange signs and are in aspect. Now, this is the part that you didn't know. And are in aspect to each other, which means that signs that don't aspect each other aren't in mutual reception. Okay, when I'm talking about a mutual reception, actually, I'm going to pull up Queen Elizabeth's chart and show you. Okay, when I'm talking about that, what I'm talking about is this beautiful reception here. Saturn is in Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Wait, can you see Elizabeth? Good. Someone's happy about the homework. Good. Okay, so that is called a mutual reception, and not only is this is a perfect mutual reception. Why? Because also there is an acting aspect. Mars is applying to Saturn. Mars is a faster planet than Jupiter and Saturn. Mars is applying to the square of Saturn. Mars is in Aquarius, Saturn is in Scorpio. This means that this is not a malefic square. This square is actually a benefic square. Now, it's going to still be a square. In other words, there's going to be a lot of stuff to deal with. There's going to be stress. There's going to be duties, but it's not going to be strife. It's not necessarily going to be a strife-filled. Even with Mars and Saturn, who are the two malefics, what we have is them exchanging signs and exchanging houses. Now, so what does that mean? That means the ruler of the ascendant, because Saturn rules Capricorn as well, is squaring, is in this mutual reception to the ruler of the 10th, which is kingship. Okay, so that's one of the ways in which we get to see how this mutual reception works. So mutual reception, it connects the signs, it connects the natures of the planets, it connects the signs, and it connects the houses that are represented. And this now comes to where I was kind of talking about, which was about how knowing what's going on with the aspects is knowing what's going on, what your life path is about, right? Because ultimately, if you, like for instance, let me just go back to her for one more second. Knowing that the ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the 10th are involved in this, then we know that has something to do with the person's public persona, right? Because the first house is the person, the 10th house is the public persona and the reputation. So we know that there's going to be something that brings the person to the fore, something that brings the person to some kind of prominence in an extremely public manner. And we also know that the 10th house is connected to kingship, so it could be very possible that kingship could be conferred, right? Mars is in Aquarius, applying, going towards, right? Remember it was said, application is like one who is going towards what they want, right? So in this case, the kingship is going towards the person. And with that mutual reception, it makes it that much easier. Now, if it weren't the first house and the 10th house, that square would be expressing itself some other way, right? So that square would be expressing itself some other way. And as a result, that would end up shifting the narrative of the chart, right? So that's my point, is that not only do the planets come together and mix their, see, as I said, aspects between planets link the natures of each planet to each other and link the houses they occupy and rule by sign. Okay, so this mutual reception, that really puts that into account, or puts that into huge focus, or into huge relief. Okay, so no question. Not every chart has planets in mutual reception. That's exactly correct. Not every actually, it's somewhat rare. And remember, in order, there are two things that make a mutual reception. Exchanging signs, or three things. In signs that aspect each other. So that means if you had Mercury in Cancer and Moon in Gemini, that's not the same thing. Hold on. And then three is they are aspecting each other. So the strongest mutual reception involves an applying aspect, like we have with Queen Elizabeth. Okay, so that's our mutual reception. Look at your charts and see if you have anything in mutual reception right now. So does everybody know, hold on one second. everybody know the signs, what signs are ruled? Yes, okay, but it's separating, so that would make it weaker, but it's still, okay, excellent. So Layla here has Jupiter in Virgo and Mercury in Sag, but they're separating. So the strongest mutual reception is obviously an applying aspect is the strongest. Then separating. Then aspect by sign. Okay, so those are the three strengths of the mutual reception. All right, so the next one is a little bit easier to come by. It's called pushing nature, and that's when a planet is applying, a planet in one sign is applying to the ruler or exaltation ruler of that sign. Sorry, that goes here. That's pushing power, what I just did. Sorry. I'm just gonna, and that should have been next. Yeah, so pushing power. So that's when a planet is in one sign is applying to the ruler or exaltation ruler of that sign. And I'm going to bring up Heidi Fleiss again so that you can see that. Or actually, is there even? Beautiful. Okay, any questions? I know that this is a rougher, great, thank you. I know that this is a rougher material to work with. You know, and once again, let me just kind of reiterate what I've said, which is that once you understand this, once you get your head around this, then you really start getting your head around how the chart works. Right? So I always tell people that reading the chart is about who is what, you know, what are the planets, who are they, and who is zooming who's doing what to whom, right? Who's doing what to whom is so much about it. It's the difference between, think of a Venus, okay? Think of two Venuses going to a party. One Venus, we've talked about essential dignity. One Venus is in Taurus, and she is in conjunction to Jupiter, and they're both in Taurus, and they're going to a chocolate and oysters party, okay? And so what are they going to bring, right? And then another Venus is retrograde in Virgo, squaring Mars, and she's going to that same party. What is she going to bring, right? So that's the difference. It's the difference between, you know, Venus is love in both of these cases. She's still the goddess of love and of pleasure and of harmony and enjoyment and all that other stuff. But one of them can really get down with that, and the other one is going to have a problem with it because she's being affected not only by her sign, but she's being affected by the nature of the aspect that she's involved with. And so that square to Mars is changing her nature. It's turning her into something she didn't think she could ever be because he's now involved in her behavior. And that's the way to be thinking about what's going on when we're looking at aspects. It's what changes you from being a full-on just mercurial Mercury to being a Mercury who can't stop cussing or saying the wrong shit at the wrong time or cussing people out because you have Mercury-Mars conjunction, right? Or you are super good with being diplomatic because you have Mercury-Saturn in Libra, right? So it's all of this is how the differences really show up. This is how all of the different ways that I've been bringing, the things that I've been bringing to you have been about being able to discern how the chart is kind of speaking specifically to you and how to come up with these specific ideas, how to understand the specificity. So when we talk about pushing power, that's where we stopped. When a planet is one sign, and I was going to do Heidi Fleiss, but when a planet is one sign, and then they are going to apply to a planet in another sign. But we have it here in this chart. We can use Queen Elizabeth. So we've got the mutual reception, right? Mars is in Aquarius, Saturn is in Scorpio. In this case, Mars is not only in mutual reception, but he's pushing the power of Saturn onto Saturn, right? Because he's in Aquarius. But so is Jupiter. Jupiter is faster than Saturn too. And Jupiter is at a lower degree of the zodiac than Saturn as well, which means that Jupiter, actually the closest aspect is between Jupiter and Saturn here. And Jupiter is doing what we could call translating the light, even, or actually Mars will really translate between the two of them. But as a result, Jupiter has the pushing power. Jupiter has the power to push Saturn's nature, not just Jupiter's nature, but Saturn's nature, because Saturn rules Aquarius onto Saturn. Saturn isn't in one of his own signs. It can. Yes, it can. I would say if you can, the question was, can a combustion be your closest aspect, your closest applying aspect? Yes, it can, your signature. However, if you can find one that is not, I would go for the one after that, because remember, combustion is debilitation. So you kind of want your signature to be able to help you on some level, but it's going to work out. It's going to show itself too. But you can find the one that's next closest in application, and that's the one that you use for life. And this is something that we'll get into about finding remediation when there are problems, but that's down the road. Okay, so you getting what I'm saying? Mars, as a result of being in the sign of Saturn, he's applying to the ruler of the sign he is in. That's pushing power. That's pushing power. Okay, when the planet that's applying to this planet it rules the sign it is in, that planet is able to push the other planet's nature onto it. So for instance, Mars is pushing Saturn's nature onto Saturn because Mars is in Aquarius. He's also pushing his nature. Same thing with Jupiter here. Jupiter is pushing Saturn's nature onto Saturn, as well as pushing his own nature onto Saturn. That is pushing nature. Now, the next one. Oh, Anna's here. Okay, hi, Anna. The next one is called pushing power. Now, this is interesting because there's some stuff that I just kind of learned about this. Oh, we just did pushing power. Right. So pushing nature is the next one. And pushing nature is when a planet is in its own dignity and either applies to another planet or I'm going to say this even though it's not in this book, or is being applied to. Basically, a planet in its own dignity in its own dignity will receive most anyone. That's my feeling. That's my personal feeling around this, working with this. Jupiter applying to Mercury. No. So Jupiter can't apply to Mercury because Jupiter is slower. So remember, in order for a planet to, this is so good. This is so important that these questions are coming forward like this. Only planets that are fast can apply to planets that are slow. So this is what I'm actually going to do it right here for a second. The moon can apply to all. Mercury can apply to all but the moon. Venus can apply to all but moon and Mercury. Sun can apply to Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Mars can apply, this is what I should have done earlier, to Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter can apply to Saturn. Saturn cannot apply. Okay, does that help? All right, so does that make, I mean, obviously all of the planets listed here can apply to the outer planets, but we're not working with them right now. So Saturn can apply to Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, right? But so this is the way to be looking at it, right? So only the moon can apply to all of them, right? Mercury can apply to almost all of them except the moon. Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Like I said, I should have done this earlier. All right, but we're all feeling our way here. So that's what we're looking at here. That's what we're really looking at, is who can do what to whom. So in order for there to be an application, so now that I can feel that people have come to a little bit more understanding, or I've made it a little bit easier to understand, can you look at your chart and find the applying aspects, right? Looking at this. Oh, thank you. Right? Okay, so can you find the applying aspects here? Oh, shit. Sorry. One second. All right. What'd you get? Saturn and Libra apply. Oh, nope. Right? Wait, what is it? Remember, Saturn cannot apply to any. Right? Saturn cannot apply. So important to remember. Right? So keep in mind this right here. Matter of fact, write it down, you all, right now. Write all of that down. Because, and in order to apply, what has to happen? The faster planet must be at a lower degree of the zodiac than the slower planet. All right, so that's the key. That's the key to what we're dealing with here. That's the key to how to recognize what we're dealing with. So, for instance, Gina, in that case, that means that Venus is separating from Saturn, okay? Because once again, application and separation are all about what the faster planet is doing. Is the faster planet in a lower degree than Saturn? Then it's applying. Has it already left? Is Saturn at 22 and Venus is at 26? She's separating. She's on her way away, just on to other things. So good. I'm glad that came back out. All right, hold on a second. So going by planet in its own dignity, Venus applying to Saturn by a sextile will be most received. Saturn is in Aquarius. Yeah, so if Venus is applying by sextile to Saturn in Aquarius, if she's in Sagittarius or something like that, yes. So then what you have there, if she is applying, that is called pushing power. When a planet is in one side, oh wait, no. Oh, it's the opposite. Sorry, that's pushing nature. You got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. That's pushing nature. When a planet is being applied to, a planet is in its own dignity, Saturn is in his own dignity, and he's being applied to by another planet, he then receives that planet. Yes, indeed, that is correct. Let me just go through this one more time just to make sure we've got it down, that I haven't confused anybody further, etc. Pushing power. That's when a planet is in a sign, like my sun is in Capricorn, and it is applying to the ruler or exaltation ruler of that sign. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn. My sun is at 10 degrees of Capricorn. It's applying to Saturn at 12 degrees of Pisces. That is pushing power. The sun then has the pushing power. He's pushing his nature and the nature of the sign, which is Saturn's nature, right? That's Saturn's feminine nocturnal nature onto Saturn. Okay, so that's pushing power. Gina just gave us an example of pushing nature. And that's when a planet is in its own dignity, right? So in this case, Saturn is in Aquarius, and it's being applied to by another planet. Okay, and so in the book that I read, it said it's doing the application, but I think personally that whether it's applying or being applied to, it's still receiving. So, for instance, Lily also she's got two planets that are very well dignified. She's got Moon in Cancer and Jupiter in Cancer. So the Moon would be, and then she's got a bunch of other things in Cancer. So the Moon would be receiving the stuff that's in Cancer, and so would Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter is receiving the Sun in a combustion, so that's a little bit of an issue there. But aside from that, that's what we're talking about. Now, why did I bring that up? Because it matters. Because it really does matter. So because it matters to the opposite as well. So that means that you don't want. That means you don't want when a planet is in a sign that is the detriment or fall of another planet. Not good. So that's exactly the opposite, right? And they're coming. So when a planet is in a sign that is a detriment or fall of another planet and is applying to that planet, not good. And I'm going to show you an example of this. Yes, it would. Becca asked if Jupiter in Cancer, exact sextile to Mars, be pushing nature. And I would say, if it is an applying aspect, yes. If Mars is applying to the sextile of Jupiter, if it's, because even if it's exact, the minutes might not be exact. Mars might be in fewer minutes than Jupiter. Mars might be at 37 minutes. Jupiter might be at 42 minutes, right? So you have that to think about as well. Keep remembering 30 degrees to a sign, 60 minutes to a degree. And so that's how you're going to figure out who's higher, who's lower in the degree scale, and what makes things close or not so close. Yes, this only works for applying aspects and not separating aspects. It's only in the case of the pushing nature that the planet in its own dignity does not need to be applying, but there must be an applying aspect with it. Okay, so in the case of Mars-Saturn, Saturn is not, or Mars-Jupiter, Jupiter isn't applying to Mars. Mars must be applying to Jupiter. Hey, my moon is separating from Mercury and Sag too, by the way, by trine. Okay, so that's my little reception, and let me give you some examples of this reception thing. We're going to look at charts that we saw last week because they're so good and descriptive. Okay, this chart said he had heart problems. And so one of the things that we look at, so we look at a natal chart in the same way that we look at a horary chart, especially when we've got something specific like this. This person wrote in and said, hey, I've got heart problems. Can you see that in the chart? And so sure enough, the first thing that I want to look at, because we want to find the person asking the question, and we also want to find the person's body, right? And the person's body is represented by the ascendant and the planet that rules the ascendant, which is Saturn. So there's Saturn in Gemini. So that doesn't really point to the sign of the heart or anything like that. Although Saturn is very close to the fifth house cusp, which the fifth house represents the heart. Okay. Now, then we want to look at the sixth house, because the sixth house is illnesses, right? Because this person is having problems, illnesses, infirmities. So unlike I do not use the modern thing of sixth house for routines and day-to-day stuff and health. Health is the first house. First house is life. The sixth house is infirmities, infirmities and illnesses. So Cancer is on the cusp of the sixth house. That makes the moon the ruler of the sixth. The moon is in Leo, which rules the heart. So one of the things that I also thought was interesting is, hey, guess what? we've got an applying aspect between the moon and the ruler of the ascendant. So here's my point. Okay, this is coming back to my point, which is when we understand, remember there's the things that I said about the aspects. Aspects link the natures of the planet, and they link the houses that they occupy and the houses that they rule by sign. Okay, the houses that they rule by sign. And that's how you come to know what's the karmic content of the chart. Because just like we saw with that mutual reception with Queen Elizabeth between Saturn and Mars, right? Saturn was in Scorpio, Mars was in Aquarius, and there was that very cool square. We've got a not very cool sextile. Now remember the other thing I said, good aspects can be made bad, bad aspects can be made good. Now, one of the things that they call, what we call good aspects, is, which are the sextile and the trine, is they actually call them easy. And I think that's a better term, easy or flowing. And then the others they call hard or obstructive. So the square and the opposition are called hard aspects or obstructive aspects, right? So easy or flowing, hard or obstructive. That means that sometimes the wrong thing can be easy. So here we've got the ruler of the ascendant, which is my body, in an easy aspect with the ruler of the sixth house, which is my illnesses, which is my heart. Not only that, we've got one of those negative receptions. The moon is in Leo, which is the detriment of Saturn. The moon is applying 2837. Here's a perfect example of the exact same numbers. The moon is at 2837. Saturn is at 2842. I used 37 and 42 right before this. Okay, so this is a perfect example of the opposite of pushing power, right? Let's say if the moon were here in Libra, which is the exaltation of Saturn, that would be pushing power, right? Because then the moon would push its exaltation onto Saturn, and it would push Saturn's exaltation. That is, the moon would push Saturn's exaltation onto Saturn and the moon's nature onto Saturn. But here, the moon is pushing his representation of the sixth house as her representation as Lady of Illnesses, and she's pushing his detriment. So it's to his so what she's giving him so easily is to his detriment. We're going to see another example of this. Okay, we did this one. I guess we did this one when we did with planetary strength, right? Because we were talking about the knee problems with this guy, and how the ruler of the ascendant is in his fall and in Capricorn, which rules the knees, right? So we were talking about that already. But one of the things that I remembered noticing when I looked at this, and same thing. So this guy has health problems. He had a knee surgery. There we have the ruler of the ascendant in Capricorn, which rules the knees. And the ruler of the sixth house, or sixth house is, the cusp of the sixth house is Taurus, ruled by Venus. There she is in Virgo. Now, this is a separating aspect, mind you, right? Venus is at 13. She's faster than Jupiter. So she's at 13. Jupiter is at 10. But look, she's in Virgo, which is her fall, but it's also the detriment of Jupiter. So we have a similar situation where the ruler of the sixth, and it's a trine, where the ruler of the sixth is in an easy relationship with the ruler of the first, and it's giving some form of detriment to the ruler of the first. And so it's showing up. So it makes me wonder if, obviously already we knew that Capricorn rules the knees, so that we already knew that the knees, we talked about this, I think maybe 2 weeks ago too, where the sign on the ascendant and the ruler of the sign that the ruler of the ascendant are in often will show sensitive parts of the body, as will the sign on the cusp of the sixth, and the planet, the sign that the planet in the sixth that is in the sign of the sixth. Sorry, the planet who is the ruler of the sixth the sign that they are in will also show the part of the body. Yeah, right? Good shares which body parts illnesses are. You know what? All of the older texts do, right? If find Christian astrology online, it's free. It's you can find like a free read-only version, and if you find any old text, if you go back, the further you go back, the more information in a more organized fashion you get, right? So if you're interested in that, like we talked about this too, and about how, especially we talked about it last week, right? When we talked about how the signs and the houses should not be connected, except that the signs do represent the same thing that the houses represent as far as body parts. And for the people who weren't with us last week, let's talk about that for just a second. So we're going to switch to the zodiac alphabet one for this one. Okay, so Aries and the first house represent the head. Taurus and the second house represent the throat. Gemini and the third house represent the arms and hands and shoulders. Cancer and the fourth house represent the chest and the breasts and the stomach. The fifth house and Leo represent the heart and the sides and the back. Virgo and the sixth house represent the viscera, the digestive system. Libra and the seventh house represent the buttocks, the kidneys, the pelvis, the hips, not the hip joint, but the hips themselves. Scorpio and the eighth house represent the reproductive organs, the bladder, the anus. Sagittarius and the ninth house represent the hip joint and the thighs. Capricorn and the 10th house both represent the knees. Aquarius and the 11th house both represent the legs to the ankles. Pisces and the 12th house both represent the feet. Okay, so that's the connection. Yes, when we look at illnesses, we consider the ruler of the sixth and the ruler of the ascendant to see if there are any aspects there. That's exactly right. And so that's my point. If we see a chart like the chart we just saw, where there are aspects between the ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the sixth, we can pretty much guess that illness is going to have something to do with that person's life, right? Just like when we saw Queen Elizabeth's chart and we saw the ruler of the first with the ruler of the 10th, we knew that there was something that was going to bring the person to prominence, possibly, or something that was going to create a public persona for that person, right? Notice I did not say career. I have not said career for the 10th, and I think I'm almost ready to do our 10th house one where we talk about, is the 10th actually career or not? Okay, so I just wanted to kind of bring that back, just to kind of, especially because we have some people that weren't with us last week or haven't been with us for the past area of time. Now, I want to just kind of, for our last half hour, we've already gone through most of this stuff. The aspects between planets link the natures of each planet to each other and link the houses they occupy and rule by sign. Once again, if you take into account what we've been talking about with already what we call essential dignity and accidental dignity, and I'm going to write that down for the people who are new too. That's strength by sign placement, and accidental dignity is strength by house placement. So think, you're an ambitious person. You've got Aries rising. You're a very ambitious guy, but you've got Mars and Cancer in the third house, in the third or fourth house. And not only is Mars in Cancer, but Mars is ruling the 10th house, or maybe Mars is ruling the 10th house or something. Okay, let's say that. You're an ambitious guy, you want to do well in your career. You come to the astrologer and he sees that Mars is in Cancer, retrograde, opposing Saturn, and with the node, with one of the nodes, with the south node. Okay? That's a very different thing than if a person comes to the astrologer and they say, tell me about how well I'm going to do in life. And the Mars is in Capricorn, which is its exaltation, and it's trining Jupiter in Taurus, and it's conjunct Venus, and it's in the 10th house. These are the things that are different. So what I tend to find with a lot of modern astrology is that someone says, hey, is this going to happen? And they look and they say, oh, such and such is in such and such house. Yes. They say, yeah. Am I going to have a baby? They say, yeah, Jupiter's in the 5th. But Jupiter is in the 5th in Capricorn in its fall, retrograde, squaring Saturn, opposing Mars. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen quite so easy. It may happen, but it's not going to be easy. That's my point. That's my point. And so the thing is it's not just the houses, the planets that are in the houses. It's the planets that rule the houses, that govern how the houses operate. Also say that when the ruler of the ascendant is also the malefic of the chart in aspect with ruler of the 6th, the native of himself may cause health problems for them due to neglect. No, I would say no, because ultimately when a planet that is malefic becomes the ruler of the ascendant, it becomes determined towards life. It will act in its way, like it's going, if it's Saturn, it's going to be slow. If it's Mars, it may be a little bit rash, but it's not going to act specifically as a malefic unless it's in malefic condition, right? So unless it's in a detriment or fall, unless it's retrograde, unless it's opposing the other malefic, right? Then it's going to act in a way, because here's the thing. Let's say we have Venus as the ruler of the ascendant and she's in the 6th. That could mean that she indulges too much and she gets sick. Let's say Jupiter is in the 6th and he's the ruler of the ascendant. That means he overindulges too much. He eats too much, or he does too much, or Venus and Jupiter too much are together. I call that too much of a good thing. They party too much. They do too much of the thing that they like, and it makes them sick. So there's more nuance to it than even that, which is a very, very good, I think that's a really good way to be thinking about it, but it's even more subtle than that. And it can express itself in an even more subtle fashion than what you're thinking. A peregrine malefic may be better than a benefic in fall detriment. Okay. I want to first of all say nothing happens in a vacuum. Nothing happens in a vacuum. A peregrine malefic, let's say we're talking about a Saturn in Pisces. Okay, I have Saturn in Pisces. That's a malefic in peregrine. But let's say the Jupiter is in Cancer. Then that isn't so bad, right? Because then the Jupiter is really well placed, because Jupiter rules Pisces. The Jupiter is well placed. If there's a trine between them, that's even better. And then we've got Jupiter, then we've got, a really nice connection. And there's a reception because Saturn's in Pisces and Jupiter's on sign, and Jupiter is already, he's applying to Saturn, right? So we've got the pushing nature. Now, what if Jupiter is in Gemini retrograde like mine? Then that means that Saturn isn't going to be able to find a way to be Saturn that's comfortable, right? The Jupiter is already misbehaving, which mine does. The Jupiter is already misbehaving and acting in an awry fashion. And so the Saturn is going to act in an awry fashion. So I've always had to deal with, not being, part of it has been on purpose and some of it hasn't, but not being as secure financially as others, and Saturn rules my 2nd house. Not being as secure in place. I'm living in Mexico instead of being snuggled in Sacramento, where I was living for the past 3 years. So things of that nature. So things that have to do with Saturn can't be fully supported by the planet who rules it. So keep thinking that. If you think nothing else, if you get nothing else from this, nothing astrologically takes place in a vacuum. That's why it's nincompoop nonsense when people say, well, so what does it mean when Mars is in the 4th house in Leo? And it's like, fuck you. You know what? Really? No, it doesn't work like that, because nothing astrologically takes place in a vacuum. And so if you keep thinking of that, then that means that you always have to be looking one step further. Okay, so it's like, oh, my blah, blah, blah is in blah, blah, blah. Oh, who's the ruler of blah, blah, blah? Oh, that. Oh, and what's going on between them? Anything going on between them? No, that's the who is zooming who portion, which is what we're talking about here. Aspects to the ruler of the ascendant represent specific karma on your life path. Now, everything in the chart. Now, okay, so let's talk about karma in the chart now for a second. Now, this is my particular belief about it, based on, I also do Vedic astrology, and so I'm adopting some of the Vedic astrology ideas about karma with the chart, and especially because so much of Western classical astrology is quite deterministic. It's really being used in almost a very similar way to Vedic. This is what I like to think about when I think about the chart. First of all, that the chart is your karmic record. Everything in the chart represents the karma that you came here to experience. So first, so it's not like there are karmic elements of the chart or whatever. The entire thing is your karma. Secondly, there are three types of karma. There is karma that can be changed, there is karma that cannot be changed, and there is karma that some of which can be changed and some of which cannot be changed. Now, there's the determination of that in Vedic astrology is different. I'm coming up with a different idea for myself, but I think a lot of it has to do with the nature of the planets, the essential dignity, the accidental dignity, essential dignity of the planet, the condition of the planet. That has a lot to do, in my opinion, with whether or not certain karma can be changed or not. So, and that can go good or bad, right? So, because if you've got planets that are in really good positions, they're going to do what it is they do best, even if it's not the right thing. Remember, we talked about how good planets, benefic planets can become malefic, malefic planets can become benefic, right? So all of this, remember, once again, Mercury is the ruler of astrology, and certainly the ruler of our astrology, the astrology that you do with me. And that means that we mix. It's all about mixtures. It's all about combinations. It's all about figuring out, reading the combinations. So we never just look for one thing to signify anything. We always look for more than one signifier or confirmation or confirmer. Oh, so we've already talked about this, looking at aspect as a form of regard. Planets look at or regard 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, and 11 from them. Okay, so we've already looked at that. And now this is just a little bit to think about. Oh, good. Okay, this is where we're going to last. I'm going to do the other 4 first, and then I'm going to go to the conjunction, because we're going to talk about stelliums, and that's how we're going to finish. Okay, so I would take these down. The sextile, like two people seeking friendship together, right? So think about the aspects. Think about the aspects think about what we just saw in that heart problem chart. That was a sextile. The friendship was between the illness and the body, right? So that friendship between the moon and the Saturn made it easy for the illness to hit the body, made it easy for the heart to be compromised, right? So the trine, like two people who are equal in nature. Now, we just saw another health chart, which was the knee problem chart, where the Venus and the Jupiter were in trine, right? So that makes them equal in nature to affect each other. Something to think about there. The square, like two who are seeking rulership, each for himself. Well, we just looked at the square, right? We looked at the square with Queen Elizabeth, and we even looked at the square with rulership, right? So we can see with the square there is a vying. So there is a vying, that the planets vie for attention, for prominence. There's a vying, right? But we also know that there are positive squares and there are negative. There are malefic squares and there are benefic squares, right? Where that tension and action that the squares are representing actually bring forth the thing that we really want. And then the opposition, like two people battling each other strongly. Oppositions, especially in horary, are considered You don't really want them. Now, like I've said, in the natal chart, anything can be made to work. I've got a Jupiter-Mercury opposition. Mercury's in Sagittarius, Jupiter's in Gemini in retrograde, and here I am teaching this class. So that has nothing to do with it being able, but Jupiter rules the first, Mercury rules the seventh. I've never been in a long-term relationship, right? So these things do come to bear. These things do come to bear, and that's kind of why I feel like maybe I've been a little bit all over the place, or rather, I won't say I've been all over the place. What I realize is that this is a two-part class, and that the second part is really about looking at the planets coming together and the houses, because that's what it's all about. So if you can do anything, if you do anything for homework at all, what I would really suggest is parse out all of the aspects in your chart, separating, applying, whatever, right? Because at this point, you should be able to at least have an idea of what I'm talking about. We haven't even talked about orbs. We haven't talked about any of that other stuff, and we'll come to it. So when we do part 2 of this one, we'll do orbs, and then we'll do more around actual interpretation. I mean, we've seen some charts, but we'll do more kind of around interpretation and in picking out what the themes are, because that's what the aspects really are doing. They're picking out what the life themes actually are. If a planet is exalted or domicile, but it's in retrograde, would it still be somewhat comfortable despite the retrograde? Yes, it would. Yes, it still will. And it can still produce. Now, remember, the answer to some of these questions is in your own life. And so that's the other thing I kind of want to just talk a tiny bit about before we go to the conjunction and stelliums, is that it tends to be, what I tend to see is that people are always asking, hey, what's going to happen? Oh, I've got this blah, blah, blah in my chart. What does that mean? What does that mean will happen? And what you need to remember is that you've had this happening since you were born. It's actually been in your chart. Your chart's been working since the minute you came out of the womb. It's operating. It's actually operating. The best thing for you to do is use your powers of observation and look at your own life and see how it's working out. But you can only really do that if you know enough, right? What do I always also say? The more you know, the more you can do. Know more about what the planets represent. Mercury isn't just communication. Venus isn't just love. Jupiter isn't just wealth, or Jupiter isn't just expansion, right? Saturn isn't just restriction. Learn what these planets are. Learn who they are, what they do, and learn how they operate, and then it will be easier for you, right? Then it will be easy because you'll say, okay, my Jupiter is in Sagittarius but retrograde. It rules this house and it rules this house. How does that area of life usually work in my life? If you can do that, that's like I did with that guy who said, oh, thank God I got accepted to my Jupiter, to my college on my Jupiter line, and his Jupiter was retrograde in Virgo in combust. And I said, hey, I would not want to live anywhere on my Jupiter line with a fucking Jupiter like that. And I said, you know what? But let me just be sure. Is Jupiter acting in a benefic manner or not? How's your love life? And he said, what love life? That's my point. Right? Jupiter can't be Jupiter if he's fucked up, if he's in bad condition. Venus can't be love goddess if she's in Virgo and square Mars or something, you know what I'm saying? These planets can't really be everything they can be if they're in the wrong place. And so also, they can't be all that they can be or all of themselves depending on who they're involved with, right? If Venus is with Mars, that's going to make her rougher and more passionate and hot to trot, right? If Saturn is with Jupiter, that's going to make him less pessimistic, more optimistic. If Jupiter is with Saturn, that's going to make him less optimistic and more pessimistic. If Mercury is with the moon, that's going to make him more in touch with his feelings and more able to express what's inside him and what's in his mind. Maybe, unless it's mute signs. Remember we talked about that, right? So that's kind of my point, is that this is how the chart ends up showing individually what's going on with everybody, what's going on with every single chart, because everybody's got something different going on. You know, but like, yeah, I might have I've got an opposition with Mercury and Jupiter too, but it might not be in the same sign. It might not be ruling the same houses. It might not be, get it? So all of these different ways. So do your very best not to try not to reduce. You're always looking to expand your ideas and your understanding as opposed to reducing it down. And you're also always looking for observable phenomena. Let's talk about the conjunction. So one of the things that I found in this book that's really fascinating, because one of my pet peeves is everybody's obsession with stelliums. Lily and I talk about it because Lily has one, or she has something similar. And this book calls this collection of planets that are in the same sign an assembly. And I love it. And the assembly it's essentially, especially if they're within 15 degrees of each other, we call them an assembly. That's what I'm going to use from now on. I'm never going to use the word stellium again. If you have a bunch of planets in one sign, in one house, and especially if they're within 15 degrees of each other, you have what's called an assembly. And an assembly is a sign of joint action and similarity of purpose. So one of the main things people are always asking is, well, what does that mean for me? You know, what does that mean that, I've got all of these things? Now, of course, I get pissed off and think, well, stupid, just look it up. Because really the stellium is the easiest thing to look up, right? You look up what each of the planets represents. You look up what each of the houses that each of the planets represents. And then you look up the sign and you look up the house that they're in. And that's how you figure out what the stellium is trying to do. Would you say that aspects to the outer planets could be debilitating too, or should we just stick to the sevens when you're using this logic? That's a good question. I consider Neptune to be the most detrimental planet in the chart. Neptune is the worst malefic in the chart, in my opinion. I don't really consider Pluto as a transformer, so to speak, and Uranus, can make things erratic. I use them so little, but if they're really prominent, like if they're in a really close conjunction or opposition or something like that, like even like the trines and the sextiles, I don't really look at them that much. I will say, if you've got Moon or Mercury and in conjunction or any kind of connection with Neptune, especially the hard ones. Let's go with specifically the hard. Conjunction, square, or opposition. Any planet in conjunction, square, or opposition to Neptune, that, in my opinion, is a debility of some sort. Now, it's not a debility in the classical sense of debility, but it is a debility in that the Neptunian nastiness, the Neptunian weirdness comes out and shows itself and screws things up. And you know what you really don't want is Mercury-Neptune conjunction. That's why I call it the muddled thinking. You really don't want Moon-Neptune conjunction. You don't want the Mercury-Neptune conjunction. Those things are difficult. Those are hard. Okay, so the assembly, when planets are in the same sign, they're within 15 degrees. Now, this thing that I've listed is actually a little different. I'm going to come to your question in 1 second from the idea of assembly. This was considered the three ways of in which planets could be in relationship. They could be in the same sign, they could be within 15 degrees, they could be within 3 degrees. And that got switched off. But what we're really looking at is this: a group of planets that are within 15 degrees of each other. Moon, trine, Neptune, both at 10. No, remember, I said only the hard aspects. The hard aspects are the conjunction, the square, the opposition. I mean, I'm not saying that you won't experience anything, but in my opinion, those are the ones that really, really show themselves. Oh, Becca, actually, I have you can write your answer into the chat. Do you experience the Moon, trine, Neptune? Do you experience the confusion, delusion, proclivity towards fantasization, towards daydreaming, towards not seeing reality, so if it were Moon and Neptune, then it would even be my own thoughts can be muddled, my own I don't know what I'm feeling. Now that would be more like it, Sun conjunct Neptune. So yeah, that would be closer, Layla. That would be more like it. So, and what are the things with the Sun? So my identity, putting myself forward, which me am I putting forward, is basically the Sun, right? Because the Sun is about prominence and visibility, identifying my own feelings and needs, or seeing myself objectively. We all have that problem. We all have that problem. I would think, what I'm thinking is, it would be especially where maybe it would show itself as one thing. I'm talking to Becca specifically, where with Neptune would show like, oh, I need this, but I really didn't need that. I needed something else, but I didn't know that I needed that other thing. But I've been thinking I need this thing all that time. And where I'd be completely kind of snowed by what my feelings are. Like I'm always feeling that I want something, but it's not the thing that I'm really feeling that I want, but I don't know that. That's how the Moon Neptune thing would work. But I don't experience what you just shared, but it's in my 7th house. Rose-colored glasses when it comes to relationships. Okay, right. And so what we'll find is also probably with Diana, is that the moon, it will go into that kind of Moon Neptune in relationships. So that's when it will be difficult to know what it is, the rose-colored glasses, what's real, what's not real, what I can rely on, what I can't rely on, and then trust myself, not trust myself. That's where, so once again, also rose-colored glasses in relationships, okay? So once again, the house, so see how the house colors the aspect. So we can also see this from Diana's chart, if it is Diana, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we can also see that from Diana's chart that she might be particularly relationship-oriented. Is that the case, Diana? Because the moon is in the 7th as well. So she would be, it can be different. Yes, okay, right. So the moon is in the 7th, so we would see one, that the proclivity is towards relationship so that the karma can be acted out. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So the chart has made her, the chart has determined her towards relationships so that she'll work out this Moon Neptune thing when she's in them. And that's how, yes, Pluto can be difficult, but that's usually because Pluto takes the rug from under us, right? And what we thought was once, secure and safe, all of a sudden we don't know where the hell we are, and we're going dark, or what, we're running in the dark, or whatever. Saturn conjunct Neptune, or Sun conjunct Neptune, daydreaming about a great career. Yes, very good. Yes, it is. She says it's daydreaming about a great career, but procrastinating your college assignment. And that's because there's always it's because the non-reality is more interesting than the reality. That's the problem with Neptune. It's the rosy picture that we create that's more important. And so it's kind of what, like I used to say, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, where, oh, the wizard, oh my God, the wizard. And then you lift the curtain and it's just this, pudgy old guy from the Midwest. That's the Neptune thing. That's the Neptune thing. So the issue for those of you who have the Neptune really close to your planets is that you have to be constantly discerning for yourself what is real. You have to be constantly kind of going against the temptation to succumb to the non-reality, because that's what you're going to want. You're going to want the non-reality over the reality, and it's going to set you up for a fall that fucks you over. Yes, exactly. Moon, Pluto, Sun, Mercury, T-square, and that all happens all the time. Lovely. Okay. Yeah, so the Pluto and the rising, that can be who am I? I'm constantly losing myself all the time. I thought I was this and now I'm that, or, I was here and now I'm there. And how did I come to this from where I was? And, that's the Pluto. But once again, I don't think of Pluto as malefic, as he can be hard because he's about destabilization, right? But I don't think of him in the same manner as I think of Neptune, who is a shyster, who's a con artist. That's my feeling about Neptune, is that he really is he's this horrible con artist who cons you into thinking that you're doing the right thing. He cons you into thinking that this is what you want. That's why when you see people who have Neptune on the 7th house, Neptune on the cusp of the 7th or in the 7th, you can almost always tell them you attract liars. You attract people who aren't what they say they are, because that's That's how the other person is presenting, especially in intimate relationships. So, Dinah has the Neptune in there. So what's in my head is more fun. Neptune in the first. Oh, well, I'll tell you an interesting thing about Neptune in the first. Neptune in the first, I was having this really interesting conversation with this person with Neptune in the first, and I was sure it was a man. And we were talking, we were going back and forth, and we were having this great conversation. And then finally she said something that showed that she was female. And I was like, oh my God, really, you're female? And then not only was she female, but she had a completely different identity. Like the name she was using was completely different. Like everything about her was a completely different identity than what we had, than what I had met and had come into contact with. And that was a perfect Neptune in the Ascendant thing. So Neptune in the Ascendant, that can be hard too, because it can be hard like Pluto, because who am I really? And Neptune in the Ascendant can be worse, because it can be, what do I need to be who I am? You get the courage to be fully who I am. Do I need that drink, right? Do I need a joint? Do I need that drink? It can be that, and it can also be, I don't know who I am. I'm this, and now I'm that, and not in the same way as Pluto, where it's deconstructed down, where it's I was this, and now everything that I believed has been taken away, and I'm no longer that at all. That's Pluto. With Neptune, it is, I was this, but that wasn't really who I was. I thought that's what I was, but that's not really who I was. How does one with Neptune and someone asks, how does someone look? How do you go about not attracting liars? Well, the first thing is, what do they say? Trust but verify. That's the most important thing. Remember, I think the most important thing to remember as a person with Neptune in with these important things is that, once again, the illusion has more glamour, has more charge, has more magnetism than the reality. And if it seems too good to be true, it is. But with Neptune in these places, you're going to want to go with what seems too good to be true. That's why with Layla in the 10th house, it's dreaming of this career and not doing enough to make it happen, right? Because the nuts and bolts about making it happen, the nuts and bolts about being in the relationship is much less interesting than the guy that swept me off my feet with the Jaguar and the blah, blah, blah. And then I find out it's his best friend's Jaguar, and he lives in a trailer and blah, 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 right? Right. So that's my point, is that I think that's what we don't talk about enough with Neptune, because we're so busy glamorizing. Neptune is the glamour, and glamours were used to kill people. The Lorelei, they're glamours, right? The Loreleis are the women who sing out in the on the sea, and they bring men to shipwreck. That's a glamour. They put a glamour over those people. They put a glamour over those sailors and send them to their deaths. So the thing about glamour, woo! Oh my God, someone's got a partner with Neptune in the 7th. So, wow. So that would be, what would be interesting about that is the creativity around that would be interesting. If it can be creative, it would also possibly be about, you said this and it isn't the truth, and I said this but it isn't the truth, or I thought this is what I wanted but it's not what I want, or things are shifting. Things can be shifting all the time, because what we understand about what we want is shifting. Where we don't see it, it's where we're not committed to reality. Where the place where Neptune, we can say that the house where Neptune is where we're not committed to reality. Yeah, we took a little Neptune. See how malefic it is. It got us totally off of our message, or our thing. And look, we're almost done anyway, so it works perfectly. But see, I told you, Neptune is the most malefic planet. It's detoured us completely into this non-reality. I don't even fucking use Neptune. Neptune conjunct Saturn in the 9th. That can be good. I've had a lot of issues with discerning what I want to do with my education and career path. Excellent. That can also be good, though, for the spiritual thing, because, of course, Neptune wants to leave the reality of the mundanity, right? So Neptune, so this this can be good and bad, because remember, Neptune is malefic. So Neptune will incline you towards the most fantastical kind of spirituality. And you, on some level, you're going to want to resist that because, okay, yeah, we all need to kind of go, thanks. But this has been great. Yes, I will send the recording to everybody. And, yeah, if you have to go, whatever, I'm just going to finish what I'm saying here about the Neptune again. And, of course, if there, can we use the last 5 minutes to answer any questions about the actual subject matter? Thank you, Maria. Is it Maria? How do you pronounce it? If there are no questions, then we'll stop there. Then we'll stop here. But Mariah, okay, great, thank you. Excellent. Please come back. So I'm here so a few things. First of all, I put a link to my questionnaire in the chat. So before you leave, please go to the chat, or maybe I'll even send you the questionnaire after. But under assembly, can you explain the difference between 2 and 3 being within 15 degrees? 15 degrees was believed to be when planets are starting to come into influence with each other, and within 3 degrees is when it's closing towards an exact. When we call it exact aspect, we call it partile aspect, and so within 3 degrees is going towards. It's getting very, very close to partile. It's at its most active point. Now, this is what the Hellenistic astrologers believe. This is not necessarily what I work with and will teach, but I just wanted to show that was a. There's all of these very specific delineations. Okay, so that is that's our class for today. I hope that it was organized enough for you, and that I can see that it was a lot to deal with, and yeah, it was a deep class. And so next week I'll do part 2 of this, and we'll look at charts, or I think next week I'm ready to do 10, to do house 10, and to look at house 10, or maybe I'll do Venus and house 7. I'll let you all know by Tuesday. All right. Thanks so much for coming, everybody. And we will see you again next week, I hope.